Hi, I'm Randy Franklin Smith. I'm going to show you how easy and how fast it is to install Logger on a Linux system. And then we'll configure Logger to collect the event logs from our Windows domain controllers. So as our first step, we'll take our Linux system and we'll install Logger. And as you're going to find out, it's really very much like installing a Windows application on a Windows system. It takes no time at all. And it's easy. Everything we do will be performed within the GUI. Then we'll go over to our domain controller and install our Smart Connector, which is the agent that then will send the security logs of our domain controller and any other logs for that matter to Logger. Here's our Linux box. I'm going to log on as root. Now the first thing that we need to do is create a user account for Logger to run as in the background. So we'll just go to System Administration, Users and Groups, and add a new user. We'll name it Logger. Give it a password. And we can accept everything else. All right, super. Now we need to copy the license file and the bin file, which contains the actual installation of Logger here to our Linux system. Now I've previously downloaded it to one of my Windows file servers. And maybe that's how you'll do it as well, so I'll show you how to connect to your Windows file server. We just go to Places, Connect to Server. We'll change this to Windows Share, and then we'll browse the network. It's really a lot like Windows. Let's drill down into Windows Network, and then my MTG domain. This is the file server, and now it wants my Windows credentials. And here's where my Logger 5.3 files are. There's the license file, and there's the bin file. We'll just copy these over here to my desktop. While we're waiting for that to complete, I'll close these windows. And then we need to open up a couple ports on our firewall so that Logger can accept events and so that we can access it through its web interface. So we'll go down here under Administration to Security Level and Firewall. And let's open up port 443 for HTTPS. And then before we can run the bin file, we just need to set the execute permission so that it can run. So that means going to the properties of the bin file, to the permissions tab, and we want a check mark here on execute. Now just double click on the file, and remember to select this option, Run in Terminal. And then within a few seconds, our GUI installation wizard will come up. And there it is. So this is a lot like just installing a normal piece of Windows software, complete with a wizard. Now it asks us where we would like to install Logger. And let's install it in its home directory. We need to supply the license file, and that's under root and then desktop. Now the installation kicks off in earnest. Okay, Logger wants to know what user account it should run as. And you'll remember we created that as Logger. And we do want to install it as a service, which is just like a service in Windows, meaning it will automatically start and run in the background. Okay, we are done with the installation. Okay, so our installation is complete. Logger is running in the background, and that's the URL that we need to use in order to connect to the Logger user interface. So let's go over to our Windows box for this. So enter the IP address along with HTTPS. You can ignore that certificate warning. And the default username is admin, and the password is simply password, lowercase. So at this point we are in Logger. Now, like any good information security professional, the first thing we should do is change that default password. So go to System Admin and then click on Change Password. Okay, great. Now, let's go to Configuration and just make sure that our Smart Message Receiver is enabled. So ArcSight Logger can receive events through a number of different protocols and methods. The one that we'll be using in order to send Windows events from our domain controller is via Smart Message, and yes, it is in fact enabled. So we're in good shape there. All right, we already have Logger installed, and as you can see, it was pretty painless. Really about the same amount of effort as installing a Windows app on a Windows system. Now let's go to our domain controller and install our smart connector. Okay, so here's our domain controller, and we are going to install the ArcSight Smart Connector here so that it can run as an agent and efficiently pick up the Windows security log events and then send them via smart message to Logger. Here's the ArcSight Windows Connector installation. So we'll kick off the installation of that. We can accept the defaults. So the installation is finished, and now it will allow us to add a connector, which is basically creating a connection between our security log and Logger. So we want Microsoft Windows Event Log Local. And for our purposes, we'll select just the security log. We're going to send these to ArcSight Logger via Smart Message. And now it wants to know the IP address of Logger. It wants the receiver name, and I don't know if you noticed or not, but the receiver name was Smart Message space Receiver. You can always go back to your Logger interface to see what that is, but that's the default name. And then let's name this as our DC1 connector. This is just to identify messages from this particular connector once they end up over in Logger. And so finally, we want to install this as a service so that it will run in the background automatically. And we are done. Now back over at the Logger homepage, I can already see that our connector on our Windows domain controller is sending events, because you'll notice that under receivers, our Smart Message Receiver has already gotten 154 events. So at this point, we have a fully functioning installation of Logger that's collecting the security log events from our Windows domain controller. If we have additional domain controllers, of course, we would need to set up a connector on those as well so that we get a full picture of what's happening in our domain. Now, just to show you how easy and how quick these events make it over to Logger and how easy it is to find them, I'm going to go back to our domain controller, and in Active Directory, I'm going to create a new user account. And let's use a name that's easy to search on. Now, I've previously verified that user account management auditing is enabled on this Windows server. All right, so the event should have been logged at this point. Now, let's go see if we can find that event over here in Logger. All I'm going to do is search on the username. And it says it found 7 events. And that's true when you create a user account in Windows. There's several events logged. Let's go down and look at the first one. And there it is. A user account was enabled, and it gives us the name of the account as gcon, just like we're expecting. So at this point, we have not even scratched the surface of what Logger can do in terms of log collection, archival, searching, analysis, alerting, and reporting. But there's another great video that will take you deeper into Logger and show you just how powerful it is. Okay, at this point, we're finished. We have a fully functioning log management solution collecting logs from our domain controller. If you have additional domain controllers, you would just install that same smart connector on the rest of your domain controllers, or configure this one smart connector to pull the logs remotely. Now, we've only scratched the surface of what Logger can do. You have yet to see Logger's abilities in terms of long-term archival, real-time alerting, and its reporting and analysis capabilities, as well as its security forensics support for investigations. So, I would recommend as a next step that you try out Logger for yourself. You can download Logger from HP Enterprise Security, and there's a great demonstration video of Logger that you might want to watch too. But I hope you see from this video just how easy it is to set up Logger and get it running even in a Windows environment, even if you're not that familiar with Linux.